Elizabeth, thank you for joining us today. We had a conversation on WMHT back in February about the local arts scene in the capital region in New York, and the Arts Center in Troy, but so much has changed since then. So can you tell us what the local arts scene looks like right now, and what kind of impact has the viral pandemic had on the Arts Center in Troy?
That's a big question. I think that the art scene is just coming around again. I think when we first closed in March, there was a lot of activity and a lot of people wanted to come together and online and make art and help each other and fundraise, and it was very active. And we were all part of that, and it was kind of fun. And then things got quiet for a month or two as we got used to it, as we had to think about our families, as we had to earn a living, whatever that may be or not. And I think unfortunately, I think the death of George Floyd almost reinvigorated the art scene in a very different direction and brought new energy around communicating and what art can be used for, right? Art as protest. So I think that the art scene's a little messy, right? It's in all of these different directions.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's almost like the pandemic and the death of George Floyd just sort of collided into one moment. And the art scene being messy could be a difficult thing, but also could be a good thing as well. And I'm kind of wondering, what does the Art Center look like in terms of financial stability right now? I mean, do you have any kinds of new approaches to programs that you've had before?
Well, so right now, we don't really know what the financial forecast will look like. The Art Center earned around 60 to 70% of its overall income. And we did that through classes, through contracts, through events, through the bar, all sorts of public-facing activities. One of the reasons I loved the Art Center was it was very public-facing, and I liked that it had that kind of zeitgeist. We're not clear how many people are going to want to come back. We don't know yet what our consumer, if you will, is going to want to do. We started running summer camps, and July's will be virtual, August's will be on site, and people are signing up for those. So what we did was we looked at our overall income projections and really cut them down and said, maybe we're really only going to earn about 30% of what we were a year ago. And now we have to build from there. One of the things the Art Center was very proud of itself, like what we take a lot of pride in, is we have these very in-depth classes. You can come here and spend months on learning how to do a particular thing or building community around painting or whatever it may be. And that whole program needs to change because if we get another outbreak, we have to cancel everything again. So we're moving into a lot more short format classes, a lot more one-time classes. So we just, pivot. Everyone's just pivoting to death, and that's what we are too. We're just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think we all are at this point, right?
I think so, yes. No, I mean, the Art Center benefited from the PPP program. We also received a SBA EIDL loan. So from a cash point of view, we have enough to ride this out for, we believe, a year, to rebuild our business structure, to see what the public wants, and try to find new ways of bringing that forward.
Elizabeth, you've also established a reputation for being someone who really supports and promotes public art. So, for instance, you've sponsored an artist-made skate park here and in Pittsburgh. But with state and federal protocols that really limit the way we can engage with each other in public spaces, and all these protocols about social distancing, I'm kind of wondering, what does the future of public art in the capital region look like? What is going to happen to the public art of the local arts scene within the next several years?
It's funny. I think actually public art is going to get bigger and better and be more prolific as we think about COVID. We all know that being outdoors is safer than being indoors. So art in the public realm is going to be something that really has its heyday. Art in the public realm can be a real tool for us to engage with our community, to communicate with our community, to draw them back into our downtowns. So I think we may see more passive forms of it, more murals, more imagery, more sculpture, maybe perhaps less town plazas or less skate parks. So I think it's really going to depend on the form of it. But I know that the Art Center, for example, will put out a call soon to do a few more murals as we think about how to have a dialogue with our community. I think it'll take center stage.
And in that respect, I think this is such an interesting kind of comment or insight that you have about how people are going to value public art. Do you think that the Capital Region's art scene is dealing with the pandemic differently than, you know, other major art centers like New York City or Chicago or LA?
I don't think that we're different from the major cities. I think it's an issue of scale. I think we don't have a lot of capacity to do major projects right now. But I do think that there's an urge to have dialogue. I think there's an urge to put art outside in people's way and in people's faces. I think that right now, I can only speak about kind of what's happening in Troy, and there's a real need to communicate with each other, and I think art is a great tool for that. I think it's going to take a few months to figure out our economy, the federal programming, trickling to the state programming, then trickling to state funding. I don't think we're ready right now to know what we can do in a big scale for another couple months.
Now, prior to the pandemic outbreak, the US government has traditionally cast doubt, if not outright suspicion, on organizations that create art and promote the arts. Has official funding for the arts due to COVID-19, has it been slashed due to the pandemic? And what do you think both the government and the local community, because we talked about the importance of local communities, especially in Troy, what do you think both the local community and the government can do to support the arts during a time that's been frankly difficult for many of us?
I've been thinking about this, and a lot of my colleagues and I have had a really difficult spring as our governor has made it clear that the arts are not essential, that museums are a distraction, that we're going to be in phase 4, and if he could have figured out phase 5, you know, we would be in that. It's been difficult to think about my whole career as something that's not essential, and I think that we have to understand that the government is really looking at food, clothing, shelter, and sometimes that doesn't always include the arts. So I think, yes, funding is going to get slashed to the arts. It's only inevitable that as we really need to make sure that we can maintain services, we look at what we can cut. Look at what Philadelphia is going through and its entire office being eliminated. And I know that we're bracing for some cuts through the New York State Council on the Arts is suggesting that they're going to have some major cuts this year. We're at an interesting crossroads, though, because of the death of George Floyd and because of the protests. It's become more apparent than ever that we need to communicate. We need to express ourselves. We need to understand each other better as people. And the arts are one of the best tools to do that with. So on one hand, we're looking at cuts because we're not essential. And then on another hand, we are extraordinarily essential right now. And I think that balance needs to be supported by our local governments and our state government, more so than they're suggesting they are today.
So Liz, why don't you tell us a bit about what kinds of programs or local institutions has the Art Center in Troy been collaborating with or getting involved in specifically to help youth in the local community?
You know, the Art Center has always done most of its programming on its own site, and we haven't really gotten into schools or communities. And I think that COVID has really begun to change our perception of that. As the students are learning from home, it's more and more clear that they need support in how they learn about art or how they make art. So we've been trying to do new programming around remote classes, kits, or programs with the schools, video contests, art contests, trying to supplement the art education curricula that's been a little difficult to deliver today. And I think that there's a real need for that, as students also need to struggle with COVID and their reaction to it, and how they can learn from it, or how they're growing as people, or even just needing to express their own feelings around it. So I think that the Art Center has a future in developing programming for different age groups, either at home or back in the schools.
Well, those sound like really amazing programs, especially because now that students they're now at home, they're not in a kind of a space of learning away at a school physically. It really changes the way that that young people can really engage with their own feelings and engage with larger ideas, and also to help build trust in the community.
Oh, absolutely. One of my favorite programs from this spring has been, we did a video contest to support the census. So, there's great concern that our area won't get counted accurately. And of course, so much funding is tied to the census. So we came together with a little program to do a video, 1 minute or 2 minute, Rensselaer County counts. And so we gave the kids all sorts of census facts. We gave them a how-to of how to do a good video. We gave them music that can go into the public realm, a whole little kit. And then we asked them to produce videos on why the census matters. And it has been so much fun to review the videos, to claim a grand winner, runner-ups, and the kind of creativity that the kids had. I can tell that it's a whole new way of bringing arts to kids, is through those kind of mechanisms.
That sounds like a really fantastic program, and I'm really excited to see what results from that.
They're amazing. Kids have so much talent, and all we have to do is open up the doors and let them walk through.
Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for all of that insight, and also that kind of glimmer of hope and light too, amidst the pandemic and as we recover from this very difficult time. So thank you.
Life goes on.